to be a better person. And you know what? I want you to be lively and vibrant in your worship on Sunday. I want you to worship the Lord on Wednesday. But I also want you to know how to live for God and apply Bible principles on Monday and on Tuesday and on Thursday, on Friday, on Saturday. When you walk out the door, your life shouldn't fall apart. Okay, you need to be strong in the Lord, the Bible said, and in the power of his might. All right, so we want to help you to be better people. How many would like a little less stress in your life? All right, well, let's be honest here today. There is very few things that cause stress in life, like when you look at your checkbook and it's got red. You know what red numbers are in a checkbook? It's not good. That's right. So we're going to give you some tools today and talk about this a little bit because these are some very important concepts. Now, let's take a look today if we could. We'll start off with Matthew chapter 25, and we're going to read the parable of the talents here, verses 14 through 28. And thank you, Brother Phil, for getting that so quickly. The Bible says, "For the kingdom of heaven is as a man traveling into a far country, who called his own servants and delivered unto them his goods. And unto one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, to every man according to his several ability. And straightway he took his journey." Now notice this, because right there in that passage, it said that he gave them the talents, and then straightway he took his journey. There's no indication in this verse right here that he gave them any specific instructions, but I bet he did. And I bet they knew what they were supposed to do with what he told them. Now watch this. All right, the Bible said then in verse 16, "Then he that had received the 5 talents went and traded with the same and made them other 5 talents. Why do you think he did that? Because he knew that his master expected him to be wise and to be a good steward with what he gave him. He knew it. All right, verse 17, "And likewise he that had received 2, he also gained other 2. Why did he do it? Because he knew what his master wanted him to do. All right, but it said he that had received 1 in verse number 18 went and digged in the earth, and he hid his Lord's money. After a long time, the Lord of those servants cometh and reckoneth with them. And so he that had received 5 talents came and brought other 5 talents, saying, Lord, thou deliveredst unto me 5 talents. Behold, I have gained beside them 5 talents more." And notice what his Lord said. "Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of the Lord." He also that had received 2 talents came and said, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 2 talents. Behold, I have gained 2 other talents beside them. His Lord said unto him, Well done, good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of the Lord. But then notice what happens in verse number 24. "Then he which had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew thee that thou art a hard man, reaping where thou hast not sown, and gathering where thou hast not strawed. And I was afraid, and I went and hid thy talent in the earth. Lo, there thou hast that is thine." Now, I want you to notice this, because the other 2 guys didn't say anything to him. They didn't say anything about being afraid. They didn't say anything about their master being hard. They just received what he gave them, and they went and were good stewards of that money and returned something extra back to their master. Well, this guy, for some odd reason, didn't have the same understanding of what he needed to do with that stuff than the other 2 guys. And I want you to notice the first 2 guys, something powerful happened for them, but notice what happened in verse 26. His Lord answered and said unto him, Thou wicked and slothful servant, You knew that I reap where I sowed not, and gather where I have not strawed. Thou oughtest therefore to have put my money to the exchangers, and then at my coming I should have received my own with usury. Therefore take the talent from him, and give it unto him which has 10 talents. Now I'm glad that the young people are in here today in the college career. Is there anybody here today that wishes that financially you could go back to that age right there and know now what you, is there anybody? I wish that at this age now, I wish I could go back to that age. And the stuff that I'm going to talk to you about tonight, I wish I would have known it then. Because the school of hard knocks is not a very fun way to learn finances. So, do you have a worksheet? Do all of you have papers? I'm looking right here. Yeah. All right. I'm going to save you 20 years of hard work, Marion. 20 years. I think each of these guys need 2. You got to give them more. All right. All right, Brother Phil, throw up our slides if you would. We're going to talk today about personal finances. And we're going to talk a little bit here in your handout. Notice this, that in the parable of the talents, that money was given. There we go. Thank you. Money was given to 3 men. All right. And notice how they responded. You'll notice in our handout here today, notice the response. 2 people understood that they had a responsibility. And this is a key word that's got to be established in all of our vocabularies when it comes to being good stewards of what God has given us. Nobody is responsible for how you handle what God has given you, except for you. That's called personal responsibility. You can blame the government, and yes, there's plenty that they do. You know, if you want to try and operate your checkbook the way that the government operates theirs, they just print more money and they just keep spending what they want to. If you want to try to operate it, that's fine, but you're not going to be very successful. It's important that each of us has this understanding. Personal responsibility is the key. Have you ever been in a financial mess before? All right, there's probably several reasons why. There's a lot of different possibilities of why. But I want you to understand this. There are times when we just don't handle what God has given us properly, and we get ourselves in a mess. Right? If you've ever got yourself in a mess, do you know who is responsible to get you out of that mess? You are. Your neighbor. Your in-laws. You. Okay, we're talking about personal responsibility. So 2 of these guys understood that they had a responsibility, and one just simply called his master hard and decided to hide it. Now notice in your handout here that the 2 men who gained were rewarded. And this is a very important principle, folks. You got to understand this in your life today, that if you will operate based on godly and wise principles, God will reward you. But then notice this, the one who buried the money was punished. Now I understand that in the full context of this parable that we talked about, that the whole concept is also dealing with our soul. It's very important that we understand where Jesus was trying to go with this parable. But there are some principles that are very, very important that we understand. And first of all, notice point number 2, that the parable is not about giving, it's about stewardship. All right, and this is significant. Why? Because there are times that people have this, and I'm just going to say it like this. They have a misconception that all churches want is for the people to give them their money. Well, I want to be honest with you. There are things in a church that require giving. You always got to keep the lights on. You have to pay the bills and all of that. But what we're doing here today is we're not talking anything about what you can give. We're talking about a responsibility of how you can take care of what God has already given to you. Folks, that is just as important to try to help you and live a very successful life in this journey that we're on each and every day. All right, so 2 men were rewarded, and then the other the other 1 man was punished. So the parable is not about giving; it is about stewardship. Now, notice point number 3, because here's a principle that we must be good stewards of our money to be blessed by God. We must be good stewards of our money to be blessed by God. All right, question for you. Well, first of all, before we get to the question, I want you to notice this slide here. Go to the next slide for me, if you would. How many of you know that everything already belongs to the Lord? You know, I love the scripture. It says in Haggai 2:8, one translation says that all the silver and the gold belong to me, says the Lord. What you and I have received of God really isn't ours. At any time, He can take what He wants. Brother Garrett, you were talking about it. He sets men up, He takes men down. He sets kingdoms up, He takes kingdoms down. It has nothing to do all with our will and what we want. In some occasions, it's about the will of the Lord. And so we have to understand this, that first of all the silver and the gold belongs to the Lord. Psalm 24:1 says the earth and everything on it belong to the Lord. The world and its people belong to Him. Are you guys taking notes? All right, what was point number 3? Are you sure? Well, I'm just checking. All right, now remember, folks, we're going to put a lot of attention and emphasis over here. Some of you guys have got this down pat in your life, but we're going to try to save these group of young bucks right here. We're going to try to save them 20 years of hardship. 30 for these guys. All right, so the Lord requires us to be good stewards of what He, in essence, then allows us to have. Well, if we're faithful in a few things, what does the Bible teach? He'll let you be faithful in more. But if we're not faithful in little things, what does the Bible teach? He's going to take away what you have and give to somebody that ends up being faithful with it. All right, notice point number 4, because I read this all the time, and we talked about this a little bit a couple of weeks ago. True or false? Pay your 10% and God will bless the other 90%. How many of you have heard that said before? All right, you've heard it. Is it true or is it false? Is it kind of true? Is it true in some circumstances? Is it true or is it false? All right, I'm here to tell you it's false. That is a false statement. And I'll show you why. I know I got to explain it. I got to show what. Okay, Tyler, I got you. All right, it's a false statement. All right? And what we have to look at, and notice here in our next slide, in Matthew 25, the Lord was really serious about what the men did with the money that He gave him. All right, and this is significant because right here, here's the first principle, that God wants us to be good stewards of everything that He entrusts to us. All right, and what we want to believe sometimes is, okay, you pay your 10%, that obligates God to bless the other 90%. But I'm here to tell you that's not the case. I know I'm going to have to prove it to you, but I'm going to show you. But here's another principle, that we have to be good stewards of money to be truly blessed by the Lord. All right, because sometimes we're good in every area except for what we do with the other 90%. All right, I know folks whose lives are an absolute train wreck because they can't ever sit down and find out. Their money is always dictating to them where it's going. And what we're going to talk about today is how we can put the shoe on the other foot so Heather can tell her money where she wants it to go instead of her money telling her where it wants to go. Those are two different things. All right, so we asked the question, then, is it a truth that if you pay your 10% that God will bless the other 90? And here's why this is not the case. Brother Phil, go to the next slide for me. All right, notice this. The truth is that God will bless the 10% when we are good stewards of the 90%. There's a difference. Now, do I believe that God does bless us in a certain way because we pay our tithe? Absolutely. Absolutely, I believe that. But I don't believe that God is going to override your will if you don't know what you're doing with the other 90%. If you're too far in debt, is he just going to visualize and appear before you and come and pay your credit cards off for you? You know, I heard somebody say they was really excited when the president got elected because he was going to pay all their bills. I still don't think that happened yet. I've sent him 5 letters, Sister Shouse, and he has not paid one of my bills. Not one. All right, so the fact of the matter is God is not going to take care of messes that you create. You can pray about it, but I want you to understand this. There are certain principles that work in this. That if I'm wise with what I spend and I'm wise with how much debt I have and I'm wise with what I do, then God will say, because you are faithful in this, I will bless you. Now, how many of you today think that you would do really well if, and I know you don't play the lottery, I know you don't. Oh, if you do, that's up to you and God, all right? But let me say this. How many of you today would think that just somebody dropping $1 million in your lap would change your life for the good regardless? It'd help. It would be kind of nice. You know, the wheels are turning. You see, you're starting to think of what you would do with $1 million in your pocket. These boys are thinking, man, they'd burn a hole so quick. 2 days later, it's gone. But you know what the number one problem is with people that gain something very quickly overnight like that? They haven't built up. Okay? They haven't built up finances. They just got it really quick. And so it doesn't matter how much God gives you. If you don't know how to handle it, you'll blow it. I remember standing in line many years ago, and I wish I would have had a little bit longer time to talk with this fella. I was probably 20 years old, and I was standing in the bank, and I was behind this guy getting ready to make a deposit. And he goes, "Hey, young fella, can I show you something?" I said, "Sure." And he opens up his checkbook, and he shows me, Sister Goebel, his checkbook register. And the number was 997, 062, give or take. No, this is not computing down here. Tyler, quit drooling, man. $997,000 was in this guy's checkbook. I wish I could have had some conversations with him a little bit longer, but he was really proud of that 997, 062, Brother Carter. But what was it? He built that over time. All right, people that don't know how to handle most people that win the $1 million lottery, $5 million lottery, $10 million lottery after 5 years are more in debt and broker than they were before they won the money. Why? Because people are not trained on how to handle the money. That's very significant. So, what we're going to take a look at here is this very important principle that we started with a couple of weeks ago that I want to just take a little bit of time. Guys, this right here is worth the price of admission that you paid for this seminar tonight, that you're going to pay when you get home. All right? And the last lesson, we covered this a little bit. And folks, I'm telling you, if you will grab a hold of this principle and you'll work it, and I want you to understand this. If you're nowhere near close to 75, 15, and 10 right now, it's going to take some time to get it in there. That's okay, but let me promise you, it's worth the work. It's worth the effort. Because, like I say, we want you to be as stress-free. Life is tough enough as it is. But I want you to think about this concept here, 75, 15, 10. This is what we're dealing with. We're talking about whatever that you make on a monthly basis. We base, now first of all, and this is how I do this, when I pay my tithe to the Lord, I base it on gross and not net. All right. So that part that I'm giving to God, I base it off of my first fruit. Now you may do it differently in how you calculate stuff, but that's how I've always done it, always been taught. But here, notice this first part, and we're going to give some just real solid details and explanations of this tonight. But 75% is dealing with your, and here it is in your handout, your living expenses. All right. So when we talk about this, don't base living expenses off of your gross. Okay. Living expenses are based off of your net. And the reason why is you don't get to spend your gross. Uncle Sam comes along and he's going to take his part. So I base my tithe off the gross, but all of these other figures I base off of my net. All right, 75% for living expenses. Point B, 15%. Now, and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. If you weren't here, let me clarify this. We know that the Bible teaches that it's right for us to pay our tithe, which is 10% of our income to the Lord. I base this off of 15 simply because I know that when I come to church, I don't just pay my tithe. How many put something in the offering for the missionaries tonight? All right, well, guess what? If you paid your tithe this month, if you threw some dollars in there, you're over 10%, aren't you? All right, so when we deal with other items like offerings and we deal with building my church and missions, you're going to be, if you're doing your finances right, you're going to be over 10% anyway. All right, so this is just me, and this is just a great principle that I try to gauge my finances off of giving God 15%, so that I know I'm paying my tithe, and then it gives me room in the finances to also give to these other causes. And then the third part in here is something that a lot of people just forget to do. You are important. Did you know that? You deserve to be paid. You deserve to pay yourself. Now, obviously, you're going to have to work, but every week you need to figure out a way to put a little bit back somewhere, somehow, and the ultimate goal is to pay yourself from your check 10% every week. Now, if you get paid monthly, I think last time we talked there were several who get paid monthly, then you got to figure out a way to get a part of that monthly check and take 10% of it and put it back for a rainy day. All right. Now, there's going to be times that some difficult things happen. Sometimes people lose jobs, they get hurt, they get in accidents. Every little bit that you put back will help for that rainy day or for that situation that's going to be very difficult to handle. Now, notice the next slide here, Brother Phil, if you'll throw this up, and then we'll get into this other a little bit. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but this really has to be reiterated. Point number 6, the order of finances that God really blesses. Now, one of the things that happens is sometimes people get this mixed up. You see, the first one is obviously you earn it, you have to work. And a lot of times what people do is they have this misconception that right after they earn it, what's the first thing that a lot of people do? Man, I got paid. I'm going to go treat myself. And so they do. They go treat themselves to a nice dinner. They go treat themselves to a nice entertainment. They go treat themselves and have some pizza and popcorn and curl up to a good video. Well, and they look up and all of a sudden, man, I've just had me a great steak at Ruth's Chris. I'm not sure if it was really in the budget because I've got some bills due this week, but I enjoyed it. It's up to me. I earned it. I worked for it, so I should be able to enjoy it. Well, that is not the order that God blesses. Honest question. Do you want the Lord to bless your finances? That's an honest question. All right, so this is the order that God will bless. If you get this mixed up, you're going to have all of your percentages off, and then you're going to be there every week going, man, what in the world happened to my paycheck? I see this a lot with a lot of folks, and I'm not saying here, but I mean in the world. I hear it all the time. Man, I just got paid, and I don't know where it all went. Well, I'll tell you, it didn't go in the right way. They started doing this, and then all of a sudden they look up, and man, I can't pay my light bill. I can't pay my rent. I can't pay my heat this month. Why? Because their priority is all mixed up. Now, young people, at this point, you're probably fairly lucky. You probably don't have to worry about paying all the electric bills, all of the gas, okay. But I assure you, the day is coming. And you know what's so awesome, folks, is these guys, they walk around, man, I can't wait to get out of the house. Can't wait to be my own boss and set my own schedule and have nobody ever tell me what to do again. Like that'll ever happen. But so we've all been silly. We've talked that way, and then you get out in the real world and you realize how crazy expensive it is to live in this world. Then you start paying for insurances and car payments and gas, and oh man, there's so much out there. It is expensive to live in this day and age. But folks, this is why it's imperative that we talk about issues for how to understand how that God will truly bless what we're doing. So number one, we want to earn it. Everybody's got to work. Number two, the first thing that we do is we give it. This is in your handout. Point B, give it. And that means we give it to God. Now, you may not, whatever your percentage works out to be, you may not be at 15%. You might be at 10.11%. I get that. You'll have to work through some of this as you go farther. So you may not give all of that to God right away, but the first thing that you should do every time you get paid is write your tithe check to the Lord. That's the first thing you should do. Why? Because we're talking about what God blesses. When we say give to God, we're not talking about the present. We're talking about eternity. All right, how many believe that you can actually steal from God? How many believe the Bible? The Bible said, how have you robbed me? Well, you've robbed me in tithe and in offering. So we understand there are biblical concepts that first thing we ought to do if we want God to bless us is to give it to God. All right. Second thing that you need to do, the third thing in the list, after you've earned it, then you give it. The second thing that you need to learn how to do is pay yourself. That's where that 10% comes in. Now, if you guys can learn to do this even now, could you imagine rewinded? Heather, how old are you? 20. Could you imagine what some of our lives would be like if we started saving 10% of everything we earn at age 20 and kept it back? Brother Bracken's been doing it since he was 5, so it ain't no big deal for him. I got this lesson from Brother Bracken, okay? All right, but at some point we have to learn how to give to ourselves. So if your 75, 15, 10 thing is all messed up and you're at 95 or 99.9% in in the area of your bills, of your living expenses, and God gets none and nobody else, then you got to sit down and figure a plan out right now. You got to get a hold of this thing right now because you want to live in the order that God will bless. So you earn it, you give it, you save it, and then after you've taken care of God and after you've taken care of the next most important person there, yourself, then you sit down and you pay your bills. You see, notice that we're taking care of the responsibility to God. We're taking care of our future before we are taking care of issues like Visa, MasterCard, J.C. Penney, all of those other things. We'll talk about that in a little bit. All right, so this is a very important principle that we have to focus on. That yes, at some point in time, you do got to pay your bills. Now, I heard a story, man. I tell you, last time Brother Smith was here, he talked to me about some people that borrowed money from him and never paid him back, Brother John. And so he gets ready to, just say hi to him and still owe that guy some money. So, I can't look him in the eye. That is a terrible way to live. You know it? All right. So it's important really as a stewardship principle. Just as being a citizen, we're not even talking about being a Christian. We're talking about just being a citizen of the country. It's important for you to pay your bills. Now, I understand there are times and circumstances where things happen and we have ways of being forgiven of debts in the country. I understand that. But there still is a process that God will bless if we do this. Then, once we've earned it, we've given it to God, we've saved some, we've repaid our debts and our bills, then the final thing is, if there's anything left over, then we get to enjoy ourselves a little bit. It's got to be in that proper order, though, because and how many of you know it's easy for money to just kind of disappear out of your pocket? All right, it just disappears. And things aren't getting any cheaper. So these are the 5 orders here of what God will bless. If this is the proper way to do it, then God will definitely bless you. Now, next slide for me, Brother Phil. All right, we're going to examine the 75% a little bit closer here. And you've got some margin in your handout. If you want to write some of these examples that I'm going to share, you can. But just to be able to get this down and understand this is very important, because when we start talking about 75% of living expenses, where does that money go? All right, of the 75%, the first 30%. So do you understand the math we're doing here? 75% minus 30% is what? 45%. So we'll deal with the other 45. What we're doing is we're breaking down the 75% of living expenses. This right here, folks, is worth its weight in gold. I didn't make this up, okay? But I've begun to, over the years, try to do more and more and more to apply this to my life so that there's not much stress, all right? Pastoring's not very stressful anyway, so, I just don't want to add, all right. So 30%, where does the 75% go? 30% goes for housing expenses. Now, if you'll notice in our example, we'll mention something here. We look at a $5,000 net income per month and a $3,000 net income per month. All right? 30% of $5,000 is how much? $1,500. Okay, do you see it? So 5,000, when we say 5,000 equals 1,500, we're saying 30% of 5,000 is $1,500. All right. Now, what does the average person out there do that's not really good with handling their money? Oh, look, 30% of my $5,000 is $1,500. So I'm going to go to the bank and I'm going to get me a house payment that equals $1,500 a month. See, I'm in that 30%. I did it. Isn't that good? Except for one little thing. That's supposed to be not only your rent or mortgage, but that also is supposed to include your utilities, your insurance, your maintenance, and your taxes. All right? These are things that people don't understand. So they will take their payment, they will jack that house payment up as high as they can get it. And next thing you know, they can't afford furniture. Now, you guys may not need furniture, but I'm an old man. I need some furniture to sit on. All right? Folks, this is very, very, very important. Now, look at this. These are examples here. Somebody has $5,000 a month. This is just an example. If their utilities cost $250 a month, if their insurance was $90 a month, if their taxes were $100 a month, and maintenance, mowing the lawn, all of that stuff was $30 a month. When you subtract all of that, that brings you down to $1,030. That would be what would be the proper understanding of what their max house payment should be. It's just sound principles. All right. Now, we give 2 different examples here because $5,000 may not be in your wheelhouse. Maybe $3,500 a month is a little closer. Well, there again, some people, whether it's a house payment or rent, first thing they do, man, $1,050 falls in that 30%. And so I'm gonna get me $1,050 mortgage payment, and it's too much. Why? Because they still have utilities of $150, insurance of $75, taxes of $80, maintenance of $20. And so really their house payment should be no more, or their rent should be no more than $725 a month, simply based on this. Now, these are easy calculations. Again, you guys, this is worth its weight in gold. It'll save you 20 years of heartache if you'll actually, Marion, if you'll follow us. She's got, you taking notes still? Courtney, are there words on that paper? All right. All right, trying to keep it light. All right, notice our next slide here. All right, once we have deducted the 30% off for our mortgage, then the next 15% of that. Now, folks, I know this is nuts and bolts here today, but I want you to be blessed of God. And I want you shouting. Yeah, I do. But I also want you to be successful and blessed of the Lord and good stewards. All right, transportation. Again, 15% is what we're basically looking at. So you take those same two figures that we just talked about of 5,000 a month and 3,500 a month. Somebody that brings home 5,000 a month, they look up 15% of that, $750. And again, I gave you guys an illustration a couple weeks ago of a guy that he was probably making about $5,000 a month, and and he went out and he bought him an SUV, and it was the great big huge Ford. I don't know what's their biggest vehicle? Excursion. Okay. He bought one of those. I think he financed it for 75 years. I don't know how many years it was, like 7.5 years. And he was paying $850 to $900 a month on it. All right. Now, if he made $5,000 a month, is there a problem? We're just talking strict numbers here. Is there a problem? All right, because not only should it have been 750, but in this calculation, we're talking more than just the car payment. Again, folks, to be a good steward, you're saying this is not just about how much car I can get to max me out. This is about what can I do once I add. Okay, whatever vehicle I'm getting close to a couple $100 a month in gas plus $100 in insurance. Well, guess what that does? That brings that vehicle payment down to $450 a month. That's just one. What if you need two vehicles? You got some things to work on. So, folks, you can see based on these examples, and we didn't even talk about the maintenance issues of oil change, tire rotations, filters. All of these things are very, very important to take into play when you're thinking about how much you can really afford. Folks, I'm telling you, you start getting this stuff all jacked up, too big on the house payment, too big on the car payments, too big on everything, too many credit cards, and you're going to look up and you're going to be the saddest Christian in the church. Because your mind is always going to be weighed down by, man, I'm so broke and there's so many things wrong and I can't pay my bills and et cetera, et cetera. What am I trying to help you with today? I'm trying to help you be financially free. Now, am I out of debt? Not yet. Am I trying? Yes, I am. I got 4 kids, Brother Carter, and they keep me in debt. Yeah, there you go. 4 cars. No, don't say that too loud. Because I'm still working on this, aspect of it. So you understand what we're trying to do is work in a way that God will look and say, you know what? The things that I've given, I've blessed them with this job and it makes this much. And look at what they're doing. They're paying their tithe. They're giving to building my church. They are paying themselves. And they've got their finances figured out where, man, I can give them extra because they understand how to handle what I gave them. Now, there's a great example of a guy years ago that God blessed him with a business, and he was paying his tithe faithfully, and God started really blessing his business. He was a great steward of his money, was paying his bills, paying himself, and all of a sudden, instead of making $5,000 a month, God was blessing him. He was making $10,000 a month. And he looked up and thought, man, that $500 check was easy to write, but this $1,000 check, that's pretty hard for me to write. And so then he did it though. God blessed him. All of a sudden he was making $20,000 a month. I can't even fathom that. But he was making it. And he looks up and man, all of a sudden 10% of that $2,000 check, he said, he goes and talks to his pastor. He says, I just don't think I can do that anymore. That's just giving too much. He said, you got to pray for me. He said, all right, I'll pray that God will bring you back down to that $5,000 a month because you didn't have no problem paying your tithe then. What are we talking about? Regardless of how God blesses, there's a financial obligation to be a good steward to the Lord, to be a good steward to yourself, and then to operate your finances in such a way that you have breathing room and you have margin in your life. All right, so the 15% then deals with those. Now, Brother Phil, the next slide. All right, 10%. We're dealing with the breakdown of the 75%. Okay, the 10% in your handout is point C is talking about debt. We use the same examples. You can see it on the board behind me. That sometimes we're looking at Visa, MasterCard, JCPenney, Lowe's, somebody that did 10%. That's just example payments of what they could make. But this is something that is really, really important. And that's this two little word phrase underneath it. How many of you have ever heard of debt snowball? Anybody ever heard that phrase before? Okay. Debt snowball. Young people, hopefully you will listen. See, this is going to change your life forever, what you're learning tonight. You're going to memorize this, 75, 15, 10. What's the percentages of 75 already? What are we working on? 30, 15, 10. What's the 30 for? What's the 15 for? What's the 10 for? Well, you looked on the board. You cheated. All right, but notice this debt snowball. This is one of the greatest debt-killing strategies that there are in the world today. And this is how it works. Because let's say that you are over 10%. I gave you an illustration a couple of weeks ago. This husband and wife, they paid off their house. It was a $150,000 house. They paid it off, and man, that's exciting. They were thrilled. Well, unbeknownst to him, she decided to get happy. And he got this call one day that they were late on a couple of their credit card payments. He said, "No, we're not." He said, "We don't have any." And the credit card company says, "Yes, sir, you do." And so when he talked to his wife about it, she said, "I don't have 2 credit cards. I got 10. And they're all maxed out at about 10 grand each." So he had to refinance the house to be able to pay off the credit cards. Now, that's one option. But this right here, if you're like most people, I think they say have an average of 5 to 7 credit cards out there. All right, that's an awful lot. How do you get rid of it? All right, well, we'll talk about some strategies here in a minute. But this right here is a powerful strategy that if you have several items of credit, the first thing that you do, and here's how the debt snowball works. You take that one, that's $75 a month. You do everything that you can, any extra funds that you've got. You take them and you pay that card off. Then you close it and cut the card up. Okay, then it's gone. But then you've got that $75 a month. You add that. Here's where it snowballs. You add $75 a month to the $125 a month you're already paying. What does that equal? Math people? All right. So then you start paying Lowe's $200 a month. You pay Lowe's $200 a month till it's paid off. When Lowe's is paid off, what do you do with the card? You keep that bad boy. It's Lowe's. Can you go to Lowe's and not buy something? Oh, man. I accidentally got a Lowe's card once, and I've never used it. I can't believe it. I've never used it. Did we close that yet? I don't know. All right. But then what you're doing, you're paying Lowe's $200 a month. You pay that till it's paid off. Then, because we have to be honorable, we have too much temptation when we go to Lowe's, guys. So we're going to do the right thing. We're going to close the Lowe's card. We're going to cut it up. And then we've got $200 a month that we're going to go up there and we're going to find either the Visa or the MasterCard, whichever one has the higher interest rate. We're going to take that $200 a month. We're going to add it to the $150 a month we're already paying. Now we're paying $350 a month. We only have 2 debts left. Will that take a while? Sure. But folks, what we're talking about is this great principle called debt snowball. You can either do that or you can call a credit counseling service. They will do this for you. Consumer Credit Counseling Service. You sign up, they take a little fee. They'll combine all your debts into one. You will pay them one monthly payment. They will do the debt snowball for you. Very successful program. All right. So we've covered the 10%, and I am trying to hurry. Next slide, Brother Phil. All right, 20%. The 20% are for living expenses. Now, again, this is going to be an area that's kind of challenging for you. But living expenses are talking about food and clothing, entertainment, medical, vacation, recreation. This is significant because sometimes we get carried away with, hey, I'm going to treat myself to a really, really nice dinner. Well, that's okay for you to do that every now and then, but if you're supposed to be at 20% of that 5,000 is $1,000 a month. If you just average $150 a week for groceries, that's $600. That leaves you $400 for the rest of the month to divide that into weeks to be able to eat out, and whether it's entertainment, medical, vacation, recreation, that is not a lot of money. So folks, there's times, and as you sit down and you really look at your stuff, it is easy to mess up in this area right here because you can go way above and beyond your means very quickly in that 20%. All right. So now what I want to do, because time is very much getting away from us, you can still see there from the handout of what the 20% is dealing. There's examples there. You got to consider all of those things: food, clothing, entertainment, when you are dealing with that 20%. Now, let's deal this fairly quickly. Let's take a look at our action steps. Brother Phil, next slide for me. All right, here's the first thing, action steps. The first thing that you have to do is take responsibility. All right? The government's not going to do this for you. Nobody else will do this for you. You got to sit down and do this. It's going to be a lot of work, but you got to tell your money where you want it to go. All right? Tell your money where you want it to go as much as possible. All right? So the first thing that you got to do, action step, find your ratio. All right? What's our ratio? 75, 15, 10. The first thing you do is you sit down and you write down everything you own and everything you owe. All right? You got to ask yourself, how much am I giving to God? How much am I giving to myself? And where is the rest of the money going? If you'll sit down, especially if you're in some financial straits, or if you want to know how to do this, guys, I'm telling you, this right here will save you 20 and 30 and 40 years of the school of hard knocks. Okay, I was probably 35 or 40, no, 140, but 35 years old when I first heard of this. Really helps. All right, I wish I would have been your age when I heard about 75, 15, 10. All right? So we have to ask ourselves these very important questions. What am I giving to God? What am I giving to myself? What's the percentage? What's the percentage that I'm paying in my housing right now? What's the percentage I'm paying in transportation, to debt, to living expenses? And this right here is what will tell you if you're off in your finances. That right there will tell you where you're off. All right? Because you get down and you find out where everything is going, it's possible that you might be at 85%, 10%, and next to nothing for yourself. You could be at 90% and 5% and nothing. There's just no telling where you're all at today. But the fact is, you've got a goal that you can shoot for. But the key is, the first thing you got to do is start plugging what you're making and what you're spending into these ratios. You can do that. All right, 30% is supposed to be for housing. How much am I paying for my housing right now? You got to sit down and work through it, and you can find it. All right? And this is the key. Notice that last little point down there. You got to write it down. Okay? You find out these figures, these percentages, and you begin to plug this stuff in. You know, I think what we need to do is we need to come up with some kind of a mock system that we'll design, that we'll give to these guys, and we'll make them do this. We'll make them do this for a while. Thank you, Heather. That was a good idea. I thought that's what you lipped to me. I thought I could read lips, but I guess not. Okay. All right. Now, so number one, you want to find your ratio. And you've got this in your notes. Point number one, find your ratio. Now, this is one thing too. Go back to number one real quick. I'm just checking out what I handed you here. All right, I did these questions. You can write some of them down on the side of your margin there. They are not in your notes, I believe, correct? Right? Okay, so how much, it just basically, where am I in the ratio? Where's my 75%? Where am I at in that? And that breakdown of 30, 15, 10, 20. Got it? Okay. All right. Brother Phil, next slide. All right, the second thing that's important is stop using credit. Now, some people are really credit junkies, all right, and they love more and more and more and more cards. Folks, the truth is, if you have a credit card with a $5,000 balance and you pay the minimum on it, you'll never pay it off in your life. You will never pay it off. So that tells us that credit is a huge damaging area. The whole country has never been so in debt. Americans have never been so in debt. That's why how much credit you have is very significant. Just because the dealership or the credit card company says, yes, you qualify, doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing. Because, there's this neat little trick that sometimes people will apply to 3 and 4 of them at the same time. And, oh, look at that. They all said yes. Well, that's because they didn't know that you was applying to the other one. Now, maybe they're getting a little bit smarter about this. But, folks, the fact of the matter is Americans are too much in debt. Way too much in debt. All right, so the first thing you do is stop using credit. All right, point A, use the debt snowball. B, the credit counselor, we pointed that out. That works. And then finally, you got to start canceling those cards and cutting them up. Use one for emergencies. That's fine. All right, number 3. And here it is, cutting expenses. We're talking about action steps. To cut your expenses, you got to realize this. The first issue of our lives is not always how much we make, but it is how much that we spend. All right, that is first issue. Point 3, number 3, point A, first issue is how much you spend. Again, it's that lottery concept. You can win all the money you want, but if you're just going to spend and blow it, then it really doesn't matter how much money God gives you. Notice what I said, God gives you. It doesn't matter. If we blow it, He could give you $1 million and it's still going to do the same thing. All right, so we got to cut our expenses. Now, first of all, we ask ourselves these questions then. What can we do without? Sometimes if you really are looking through your budget, you can find some things that you can really live without. I told you the other day, we got excited and I was just itching to buy some cannolis. And these are fresh cannolis that are made in Hoboken, New Jersey. They're supposed to be the best ever, and I just lost my mind. Brother Garrett, I could resist anything but temptation, and I bought them dudes. And they shipped them to my house. They had to overnight them to my house, and they were the best cannolis I've ever had. But I'll never do it again. It's too expensive. All right, sometimes you just flat lose your mind a little bit, and you do things, man, okay, I got to back up. I shouldn't do that. Was it worth it? Yeah, because it didn't break the bank. I was okay. Still in my budget, Brother Garrett. But sometimes we got to ask ourselves, can I do without this? What can I do without? Well, we could eat out less. Is there anybody here that's a master of coupons? Anybody? Okay, all right. See, now the next time that we do this, we've been talking about having some cool classes from now on here and there, and we'll get with you and we'll get with Sister Gainey and Sister Stacy. Do you do coupons too? All right, we've got some master of coupons that we'll open this up for a class someday. You guys can teach us a little bit about it. Because there have to be ways that sometimes we look at our bottom line and we got to cut expenses, all right? We could eat out less. We could use coupons, shopping at Aldi and at Goodwill. Sometimes that's important to cut expenses, cut entertainment. This is something that I found. Change insurance companies or companies that you do business with. Do you know the longer you're with an insurance company, the more your rates go up? All right. So when we redid our insurance after about 7 years, we saved something like $150 a month just in car insurance, just because we changed companies. So sometimes it's tricks like that that will help. Now, here's a fact, folks, that sometimes when you look at where you are with your vehicles, with your home, with your apartment, sometimes the bottom line is that if you are so up to your ears in debt and you can't afford where you're living and utilities and upkeep on it, maybe you just got to stop and realize I'm paying too much for this. I can't afford this house, or I can't afford this car. I can't afford these vehicles. Sometimes you got to find a way to make it happen where you downsize. Is it worth being a little bit less stressed out? Sometimes it is. I know brother and sister Garrett. Then this was a matter of what they looked at in the future. They thought there's going to be a day when we got to get something figured out. So they went from a very nice home and they downsized, just preparing. This was great wisdom on their part, preparing for the future. And so they had to get rid of some of their furniture. I sit on a couch of theirs just about every day. All right. But what they did was they recognized, and this wasn't even budget wise, this was just wise planning and being good stewards of what God gave them. Sometimes we got to get less attached to things and more attached to responsibility. Less attached to cannolis, more attached to solid finances. All right. Last slide. All right. Here's another thing that we got to look at. Sometimes you will do everything that you can do to cut expenses and you're still short. All right. The first thing you want to look at is cutting expenses. Why? Because you don't want to have to get rid of all of your stuff if you don't have to. You don't want to have to sell your kids. Yeah, huh? Huh? What? Yeah. Sometimes what has to happen is the spouse works. Now, folks, sometimes in this economy, you have both working and it's still hard to make ends meet. Well, that's when you put your kids to work. When Jeremy gets old enough, put that dude to work. Dude, you pay your own car insurance, man. You don't drive then. You don't eat. Look at his broad shoulders. That's good. But the fact is that sometimes, and I told my girls, I said, you will drive when you have a job because I can't afford to pay all of your car insurance. And so they pay for roughly half of their car insurance, and it's about to go up because I want to be able to afford them cannolis and not feel guilty about it. All right, so sometimes it's a second job or maybe even a part-time job. We understand some of these things happen. And it was under increased income. The first thing was have a sale. I don't know if I said that. Sometimes you just go through some things and realize, we can do without this, we can do without this, we can do without this. And you put it in a garage sale or on an auction and you get rid of it. Notice point E there, we're talking about retirement funds. This is what the gurus consider an emergency situation only. That if you had retirement funds and you absolutely had to get into it to clear up your financial situation, fine. It's sometimes necessary to do, but for the most part, you want to do everything else first before you dip into that because that's dealing with your future. So the fifth point there, commit to work the plan. That's your last filling. Commit to work the plan until you reach your goal. Proverbs 21:5 says, plan carefully and you will have plenty. Now, I recognize that a day like today is very practical in nature. We don't always do this on Wednesday nights, but folks, from the bottom of my heart, I want you folks to be successful in every area of your life. All right. So the burden here is this, that you recognize what I'm not doing is trying to teach you how to give more to the church. That's not the goal here today. The goal is to help you to be able to be wise with your finances so you can have a better life. And I hope there's something in this that, especially these college career, before you get into marriages and before you start all these plans, you dig into this 75-15-10 concept and eat, sleep, and drink it and make your own. And folks, if you're at a place today where you're struggling financially, begin to dig into this. That's why we kept those notes and gave you something that you could fill in. It will help you. It will bless you. You get everything in line and you watch the blessing of the Lord will increase upon your life. Again, how many want to be blessed of the Lord? Amen. Let's stand together right now. I'm so glad that you've all come tonight. And we appreciate you being here. And I hope that something that we talked about today will help you on a personal level, will help your finances to be stronger. And we want you to be blessed and happy and save people. That's what we want more than anything. So let's pray together right now. Jesus, we love you today, and we thank you for all of your goodness and your mercy, and we appreciate the blessings of the Lord. And thank you for this opportunity to come and to share today a burden, Lord, to help these great people. And I pray for their success. I pray for their finances. I pray for their jobs today. I pray for these men and women and for these college and career young people, that there would be something in our hearts that would desire to be good stewards of everything that the Lord has given us. We honor you. We exalt you today. We give you all the praise and glory in the great name of Jesus Christ. And everybody said, Amen. Amen. Now, if we are able to get the um, inspectors in and get approved, they will be delivered.